All right, awesome. So I think we have everyone. So, yeah, so we're going to have an operator panel, and people are going to explain us first their background, and how it has been like their experience operating Chainlink nodes and how they see the future of the ecosystem going forward, right? So we are lucky to have Eth.events, we are lucky to have LinkPool, Stakefish, and Certus.one. So it's probably going to be a very exciting panel, and yeah, let's get started. So I think the first thing for this panel would be already for you guys to intro yourselves, what you guys are doing, and really tell us the history for your company.
I'm Hendrik, I'm founder of Certus.one. We are a validator company, and we also provide security software for validated Oracle operators. And we just recently got into Chainlink, and we actually started in the middle of last year. Actually with the start of the Cosmos testnets. This is how we got into the whole validation space. Before, I've been doing security research and software development, and my co-founder, CTO, has been doing security research and infrastructure development. So he's got really a lot of insight into low-level engineering of infrastructure, and we try to apply that to build very secure validation and Oracle infrastructure.
Hi, my name is Chris. I'm responsible for the infrastructure of Stakefish. At Stakefish, we started Certus.one, and we started with Cosmos. We are validating the several proof-of-stake blockchain. We started with Cosmos, then EOS, then IrisNet, Tezos, and so on. Our company is focused on proof-of-stake. We were interested in Chainlink operators in Oracle because we think that for sure is the future to solve the Oracle problem. And, I came from, let's say, IT. I work in IT since the last. Now it's pretty much 20 years. And, I was working with my past company in Switzerland in the cybersecurity and data protection. And I joined the Bitfish Stakefish in November, and yeah, I'm here to bring, let's say, all the best practices for the enterprise in cybersecurity and security to run a secure validator and Oracle. Yeah.
I'm Jonny from LinkPool. So LinkPool is a company, as mentioned in the presentation, it was formed in 2017, primarily as a Chainlink staking organisation. We are the first trustless pool. In terms of my background, I come from sort of a long background of operations, software development like DevOps, gone from a mixture of role of purely software development to operations engineers and to like lead engineers for more automation-based roles. Very excited about Chainlink. Also Chainlink engineer as well. I think the premise of Chainlink is a vital one to the blockchain space. So yeah, excited.
I introduced myself like a few minutes ago, but I'm still Peter, still co-founder and CEO of AnyBlock Analytics. We are a team of 4 located in Mainz, Germany. We are about the same veterans as you are, about 20-something years in IT. So around 90-something we started. Yeah. There's lots of banks in Frankfurt, so we do lots of projects with banks. With my co-founders, I started working some 10-12 years ago in another company. That's actually how we met. We are a data service provider, SaaS operator, and we are very interested in blockchain technology per se. I think there will be many chains, and they need to be linked somehow, they need to be accessed somehow. Chainlink seems quite a good idea so far, and we just started.
Yeah, it's really great to have all these different backgrounds. So, for instance, you guys were validating on Cosmos and multiple proof-of-stake networks. LinkPool has already been focused on Chainlink since the beginning, and you guys also come from a very different background. So we already have a large diversity, and it's nice to have this kind of discussion. So I guess a question I would like to ask is maybe how do you see the node operator growing in the node operator ecosystem growing in the future? Like how do you see competition between different node operators shaping up? Yeah, basically your insights on what you predict the ecosystem will look like in the future.
Yeah, I think we'll see tremendous growth because I think what Chainlink provides us is something really unique, and it's one of the first times that we can actually have almost trustless data on Oracle's data providers on chain. And I see the tremendous growth potential for all the DeFi products based on it. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but I see that especially because currently we're just providing a little bit of data on ETH pricing. That's what we primarily do when we've been at it, to the aggregator contract. So we all contribute to this one price finding mechanism on the blockchain. But as we've seen, Chainlink has been doing some great partnerships, and I see us providing much more interesting data in the future. And for data, there's no limits, so are there no limits for us as providers?
The ecosystem, I think that probably competition will exist for sure as all the other blockchain, and I think that the most aspect that probably all the chain operator we will try to push the effort will be to build secure things for sure, because we are talking about the Oracle problem that it's a key factor to bring data in and out from the blockchain. So, and for sure also there will be to building tools for people, and yeah, I guess the most will be around building a lot of tools, useful tools, and reliable, and to for sure to help the Chainlink to be more secure and trusted from people.
The question is an interesting one. So I think in the future, especially when there's a lot more protocol developments with Chainlink, especially with threshold signatures and removing the linear increase in gas costs, the amount of oracles were requested, and the development of tools like our marketplace, for example, and third-party tools online, especially reputation services as well. So when reputation services come online, the growth and development is going to be very interesting, especially when you mix that with staking and collateral in the future as well. I think in the future, like all those guys here, we're one of the first few. And in the future, when more and more people get involved in Chainlink, you start seeing many thousands of nodes potentially in the future on the being listed and people running. You're going to get multiple levels of node operators, the ones who are first starting out and maybe are the cheapest nodes on the network, to the people who have millions and millions of states on collateral on their nodes, and the concept of paying for decentralization, paying for reputation, paying for the best nodes. For example, if you're going into a derivative swap and it's between two large organizations, you might not want 1,000 nodes on staking a smaller amount of money rather than a handful of nodes who are KYC, who are very highly reputable, who stake themselves millions or thousands of contracts to prove their honesty. I think it's going to be interesting from the people who are contributing to price feeds or doing specialised use cases. I think the concept of Chainlink being a free market in the future, and the node providers themselves setting prices and more random selection of the oracles, it's going to trigger a lot of competition in this space between different operators.
I agree with you what you said about trust and staking. So there will be evolution, definitely. There will be growth. I wonder how fast. I think that is depending on blockchain in general. So We have overestimated the growth in the last half year out of our founders' perspective. That is, and I think it will go on for a while, say another half year at least. So it is not very steep, but I think it will grow definitely, and it might accelerate. Actually, I'm pretty sure it will accelerate. Deep in my heart, I'm a blockchain pool. But it will also diversify. So the question is, where are the use cases also for oracles? Where is the data that is interesting, and where's the prime data? So where there will be premiums paid or high usage scenarios, for example. So we differentiate in the spectrum, but I think we are still a small community, so I wonder how it will look like in 5 years or 10 years.
Awesome. So you asked the question I wanted to ask actually. So and Hendrik, you actually referred to the DeFi use cases. So I guess my next question will really be, what kind of data and what kind of use cases are you the most excited to allow on Chainlink?
I actually already mentioned it. I'm a huge bull on DeFi appliances and contracts and general implementations of products in that space. For example, providing data about flights, about weather, and helping people build prediction markets and helping these oracles provide data. And you can build very exciting things on top of these that will allow much more complex financial products than the traditional finance market would allow. And data is required to, in the end, by the results of, for example, a bet or any kind. Yeah. So I think this is going to be one of the use cases which I personally think is most exciting, and we see a lot of data already coming in, working with the honeycomb market, where a lot of APIs are now being added, and we'll provide that data. So I'm really excited that we will already start to provide that as of now.
Yeah, the same. I have the same opinion. DeFi is it's the key and it's the future. And if we think that, for example, DeFi is starting to mimic the traditional finance, I think that at some point we will need all these data points that it's part of normal life. For example, as Hendrik said. But we can also think about building on top of wage things, all these kind of things. It's crazy to think, there is a lot of things to import and export. And why not also, I was just thinking now and building some data exchange about betting, it's a huge market. It's a huge market.
I think, like a lot of people when they talk about Bitcoin and money, they often say bank the unbanked. And I think we've talked about DeFi before, and even insurance products. And I think one of the massive benefits of this is that suddenly you're going to have a lot of traditional and typical products available to people who've not traditionally had them available to them before. For example, farmers who are in more third world countries who suddenly have the ability to be able to purchase decentralized agricultural insurance, for example, is a massive case. Just being able to develop and offer products that genuinely help communities in places that have not had the ability to be able to reach or take out those products before. Even the case of logistics, we was just talking about it a little bit ago before the panel, being able to track and incorporate more IoT data to create a global shipping network which is done on chain, and data was verified and not on Chainlink, and the delivery of shipments is done by and settled by smart contracts rather than more traditional ones. I think even we could sit on this panel now and talk about use cases, but then in 2-3 years time I think we're going to be very surprised, and I think it's always going to be things coming, because the use cases when you get external data into contracts is pretty much limitless. So.
I agree, but also I think there will be much more enterprise data, so we are thinking about data, specific data from private chains, chains, consortium chains. Our engagement with the Energy Web Foundation is doing things with carbon dioxide certificates. As an example, you mentioned logistics, say supply chain. Always if there's many parties involved, we are talking to a very large company about cars and what you can do with renting cars, having accidents with cars, getting tickets and all sorts of things that happen with especially leased and rented cars. So if you have objects in several parties, I think there will be many business processes, and we are very interested in the critical business processes. So once they move their processes, I mean big enterprises move their process on blockchain, interacting with counterparties, I think then there will be reporting, there will be cross-chains, there will be oracles needed.
And regulation. Right, perfect. Yes, I see that you all have some great ideas there. I think probably like if blockchain is to replicate what's happening on the traditional world, as you were saying, then we need all the data that's available in the traditional world, and that's why like the possibilities are limitless almost. So I guess also like a question I would have for you guys is like if we look at the ecosystems like Cosmos, Tezos, non-operators are building like tooling around the ecosystem, right? So they're building explorers, they're building wallets. Well, Chainlink had a great contribution from LinkPool, which is basically a marketplace where non-operators can just list themselves, put out the jobs and the adapters they're using, and smart contract creators can easily choose what kind of like who's the best to basically service the demand, So a question would be really, what kind of tools, if any, are you looking to provide or are you looking to see being built on Chainlink, and how do you feel like the ecosystem of tooling will be evolving in the future in our ecosystem?
Yeah, I'll focus on what our focus actually is, which is security tooling, and I already had to talk about it, but I'm going to say it again. For us, the security of the keys is extremely important because that's what we actually rely on when we want to securely respond to requests to our Oracle. And the security of the key is one of the most essential parts of it because that's the key used to actually sign the response, and that's the key that's potentially going to guard a lot of stake that will lie in our nodes and a lot of responsibility and liability as well. So what we will be contributing is a key management solution and potentially some security fixes and contributions to the Chainlink node to make operations more secure, especially looking at the future staking.
On our side, I think that recently we are moving on the development side. Our dev team is growing, and for sure we want to focus on create tools. We are already developing tools for other chains that we want to give to our customer user. Let's call it customer. They are. But and one thing that we are strong actually is the community, because we are organizing meetup all around the world. We are organizing a meetup in Bangkok. We are organizing an event in Seoul about DeFi, and I think that the community will be also a key, because bringing people and make people knows about Chainlink and this data that can be used is also a big product. And pretty much this, we are trying to focus also on developing tools that will help people to understand also and to make things easy as possible.
This is a question which is close to me because we've, with the marketplace and stuff, we've been trying to dedicate a lot of time into building tools for the ecosystem. For me personally, I think a lot of the advancements will, in terms of tooling, will be due to protocol development. So, at the minute, if you want to use Chainlink, you need to go on and manually find nodes what can do like a certain type of job for you, and you need to make sure that you've got a certain amount of nodes that support it and they've all got the jobs listed, and adapters, it's all the jobs are defined by the node operators themselves rather than requested by the user. So I think if like for example, the service agreement protocol is what it's formally known as, is the method where the power of what is requested is given to the end user rather than the node operator. So I think picturing our marketplace, and especially like a prepayment protocol, if you go on and you can just say, I want to create a new service agreement, and the service agreement will last 12 months long, and we will select a random list of 500 nodes will all meet your criteria of what you want on that service agreement, and then you request, I want this API and I want it to be transformed in this way and then written back to this contract. So rather than node operators defining what can be done, it's more the power is then given to the end users, and you know, us guys as node operators could be in a 12-month long service agreement where we get prepaid a certain amount of link tokens to facilitate a contract. And I think when that's the case, and then especially mixing that with threshold signatures where gas is as much as, you know, the gas doesn't scale, it's going to be extremely exciting because anyone can just go on and then suddenly create a request, and then you've got 1,000 random nodes what all meet your criteria, and you've told the node operators to fetch this API rather than the node operators advertising that they can fetch that API. So it's, it turns, and it's, for me, that's where the protocol becomes a lot more mature and powerful.
Well, we want to support, for example, node operators with dashboards. So we have insight, we have all the data readily available, we can host the dashboards, we can create alarms and provide insight. For example, if you rent out a node, if you pool your node, if you're running nodes for customers, you need billing at some point, generate some reports or paper even, or at least PDFs. There might be taxes involved, and there might be even an auditor if you're doing enterprise. So this is what we are interested in and hope to provide.
So it makes a lot of sense. I'm in a position where basically all the questions I wrote were answered already by you guys. So I guess the best way to continue forward is, like, we have a great crowd, so maybe if you guys have any questions to ask, we can start the Q&A. Come on, guys. It's an exciting talk. All right, awesome. You want to?
No one else is going to ask this one. No, I was just going to say, what's the biggest obstacle to decentralization in terms of the data feed that you're seeing? If you're thinking about enterprise, is it, like, for example, insurance? Is it, you know, does that make sense as a question? So in the sense of, if we're thinking about a decentralized data feed into a contract, we're all providing various forms of infrastructure to try and meet that demand. But from your perspective, what are the biggest obstacles to ensuring that decentralization continues?
I think one big obstacle is probably regulation and liability, because if we have threshold signatures and we have multiple people verifying some data, who's in the end liable? And that's the problem that corporates will see, and we won't be able to provide a simple solution at the moment, because while you before had one counterparty, which was this API, it's now potentially 16, 20 or more nodes. Who are you going to sue? I think this is a major problem, because that's what these corporates think about when they implement them.
Right, but it's actually starting ahead of time. Who's going to guarantee anything? That's why we're a centralized company. And my basic pitch always is Eth.events bridges the new world, which is decentralized, to the old world, which is centralized. So you need some single instance or something that promises features of a service, for example, reliability, speed, whatnot, and then actually pays or does something if they don't deliver. So, and this is a complex thing. Yeah, also a mindset question, I suppose.
So for like decentralized data, I think one of the biggest mistakes that could be made is, even if you request 1,000 nodes, for example, they all point to the same API, because if that goes down, then it's game over, and it doesn't matter that you've got 1,000 on it. So I think a big hurdle will be finding a lot of reliable data sources that provide the data points that you need. Because when it gets to a point where end users request data, it's not like you're going to be getting 50 nodes all using different APIs individually. You're probably going to get 50 nodes who are calling 5 or 6 APIs concurrently, and then there's some form of aggregation done between those APIs and then aggregation between all the different oracles as well. So at least in that scenario, the room for error, I think, is extremely minimal. If you think about, like I mentioned, service agreements, one of the notations of a service agreement is incumbents parameters. And those parameters are essentially like an SLA to that agreement, like when you've got to respond by the allowed deviation of the return data until it's thrown out, for example. So I think a lot of those hurdles might be tackled and done by the protocol changes in the future, but I think in terms of even what we do as developers and adapter support and identifying different APIs, we need to make sure that we use as many as we can, and the level of decentralization, especially for very important contracts, is extremely high, to the point that it's nearly trustless, it's trust minimized rather than fully trustless. And I think at least in terms of liability, and if anything does go wrong, I think at least because this is all blockchain based, if you got to a point where a company even potentially sue node operators, at least you have then got the visibility and the traceability of all the data what was returned back. So the fault can be pointed to the party at fault, and I think at least what Chainlink is trying to, what they're aiming to achieve is get to a point where the middlemen, the oracles, are never at fault. So,
I would just try to visualize this topic, and I think that probably because if you are talking about insurance, for example, it's would be something that would be we will change country per country. So I think that probably we will rise a kind of a node operator not certified but maybe recognized by a country. Probably this would be not the full solution, but probably can work.
Any other questions? I mean, I guess I would have a question, like maybe what is your outlook on the event of the T? So basically, when node operators, we have the possibility to run software in trusted execution environments. What do you think the repercussions will be, both on a regulatory and maybe even technical point of view?
Actually, we haven't explored too much when it comes to regulations in that part, but looking into tech, it will obviously have different requirements to hardware. What you're doing is using Intel SGX, and that will obviously limit the platforms that we can use. But we're seeing more and more adaptation, so I think that's not going to be a blocking factor. I just see a lot of just exciting possibilities once you have a trusted execution environment built into the application. But it's obviously going to be a bit of a limiting factor, maybe even pushing some people towards using dedicated hardware compared to cloud, because SGX is not that widely available in cloud. It's coming, but it's going to take time. I'm looking forward to seeing traction of non-trusted execution-based oracles and data sources and aggregators before we get into that stage, because the tech is sometimes just not there yet.
We are working mostly behind the scene, I can say, because as I started working for Stakefish, I bring in the company all the best practices I was using before. So we are approaching all the framework. We are We already started to apply to our company the ISO 27000. We are using, for example, for the maturity model, we use Isaac Akobit, and we are trying to push company-wise also the NIST framework, CIS. I mean, we are mostly working on the behind the scene. For sure, we are using the best practice also for security measure, for the key management, but we are mostly active behind the scenes, so that's why also we are not talking so much about security, but yeah, most is behind, because process also important, also in treat model. So if you have the best HSM, but then you get compromised on social hacking, or your employees, this is the SSH key, that's it, yeah.
For like trusted execution environments and regulations, I think is going to be an interesting one in the future, because you only have to look at, for example, Zcash being removed from Coinbase in the UK as an example there. So, Coinbase got a new banking partner, and somewhere they couldn't, the Zcash got removed because it didn't fit in line. So I think if you take that same example and then start thinking about trusted execution environments and generalized computation with WASM in TEs, you're going to get to a point where you've got contracts on chain, where the logic of the contract and the actual outcome and what is being calculated and the inputs and the outputs are completely shielded, to the point where only the people who built the contract know what the contract is doing. So you could get to a point where you're getting millions of dollars being paid out, but why and how and when is all completely shielded, and no one other than the people involved in that contract know. So it's interesting, but I think it's going to have to be embraced, because the reason this technology exists in the first place is to give power back to the people and the creators, and make sure everyone has access to DeFi products. But yeah, definitely agree with what's been said around like certifications and improving your integrity as a node operator. I think we've seen some teams like starting to be spun up to give like formal verifications of like people running nodes, so you can you get a stamp and say I've passed this approval test, and like going through certain certifications is something we're looking at doing now as well. I think that's going to be a big market, and I think especially for us running a marketplace, I think giving visibility of that information to all the end users and the contract creators is absolutely vital.
Yeah, I actually don't have anything to add. So it's the processes. I don't think the hardware is a thing. It'll come there, it'll be there. We're still in the early days, so we'll see. I think it's always the people. So it will be politics, it will be regulation, governance, social contracts, blah blah blah. And there's like many things to come, I suppose.
I think that's all for this node operator panel. So thanks again, guys. It was a great discussion. Awesome. Thank you very much for this session, and that closes it for the day for our Oracle HackerNode. So we'll see you back tomorrow.